evening and welcome to tonight's Newburyport at-large City Council Forum, coming to you from the Senior Community Center. My name is Dave Rogers with the Daily News of Newburyport, and it is my pleasure to be here with 7 of the 8 candidates for council at-large. Ed Cameron, Matthew Hayden, Jared Eigerman, Dyke Henderson, Rose Khan, Tommy Preston, Councilor Wright could not be here this evening, but everyone else is here. Tonight's forum is your chance to get better acquainted with the candidates running for at-large before the November 7th general election. There are 5 seats available. Candidates will have minute-long opening statements. There will be no closing statements. The rest of the evening will consist of me asking general questions for everyone to answer and questions for some, but not necessarily all individual candidates. Each candidate will get 90 seconds to answer a question posed to them. Anyone else can chime in for 60 seconds to respond. That goes for general questions and individual questions. So I may ask follow-up questions to keep the conversation going should I deem fit. And candidates will have a minute to answer those questions. And that's about it. I just ask everyone in the studio to hold their applause until we finish. So without further delay, we're going to do this alphabetically. So Ed Cameron goes first.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the Daily News and Dave Rogers for hosting this. And it's great to see so many familiar faces, family, friends, a couple of people maybe I'm not so friendly with over the years. But so I'm running for re-election to City Council at large. I'm in my 6th term right now. I've been off and on since 2007. The issues that brought me to this in the first place were some that are still familiar to us now. The schools and school funding. At that point, we had lost about 30 teacher and assistant positions in the public schools back in 2007. The waterfront, which we're still working on, and we've made major progress finally, due to, in fact, a lot of the work from people at this panel and out there in the audience. But we still have so much more to do. We want to focus on, at least I do, want to focus on housing and affordability to stay in Newburyport and making our community the best place it can be. Thank you for your interest and look forward to talking about these issues with you tonight.
Matt Cain is next. Oh, Ben, I knew it, didn't I?
Are we in alphabetically correct order? All right, good. Yeah, so my name's Matt Cain. I've been a resident of Newburyport now for 20 years. Moved here from Boston with my wife when we were pregnant with our daughter and actually built a house in Ward 2, but since then have moved over to Ward 6. She just graduated from Newburyport High School last year and is a freshman at University of New Hampshire. I'm running for City Council because, like others, like many here at the table, and I would assume all of you, I really love this special place, and I want to help keep it authentic. I think it's important to point out that I'm one of only 2 independent candidates running, and I think that's important because I think partisan politics really don't belong in our city government. I own my own business down in Boston. I've been in the commercial design and construction industry. And I've done that for about 15 years now. I laugh because my literal job is to collaborate with multiple stakeholders on a daily basis to get projects done. And sometimes those take weeks, sometimes they take months, or sometimes they take years, as Ed just pointed out. When I'm not doing that, I'm involved with my employees and making sure that the bottom line is taken care of. These parallel what you need to do in city government very well, I think.
Thanks. Jerry, are you next?
I'm proud to be a native, but it's more complicated. My parents split up 3 months after I was born at Anna Jake's, so my sister and I were down in Cambridge with our dad every other weekend. In 1977, Mom moved us to Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Her mom stayed here. She kept her property in Plum Island, so we came back a lot. In Cleveland, our schoolmates were about 1/3 black, and I learned only much later how unusual that was. The city of East Cleveland had block busting, but in our suburb, it's about triple the size of Newburyport. There really was no whiff of conflict. 2 years in the Rust Belt, and we moved in with my dad in North Cambridge. Like many kids, we had keys to the apartment. We took the T everywhere. I went to boarding school at 14 at the other end of the red line. I did well. I got into Harvard, other end of the red line. During a year off, I worked at a hotel. That's where I first worked with gay people, Hispanics, Haitians, illegal Irish. After college, I lived a year in Budapest, 13 in San Francisco, and moved here in 2008.
My name is Dyke Hendrickson. Thank you, Dave, for having this. I was working with Dave for a number of years at the Daily News. And I'm a journalist and a historian. And as a journalist, I say this: don't bury the lead. And my lead here is we have a problem with the Merrimack River. There was a report this week that said the river, the CSOs, and the pollution had spiked to 1.5 billion gallons in this year. That is much higher than it's ever been. And we have a lot of great institutions here, great schools, City Hall's great. The one thing we're not doing enough on is the river, and we got the wake-up call. 1.5 billion gallons of effluent coming down the river is a very serious thing. And I want to run, and if elected, we'll ask the mayor to start a committee on water quality and get a coalition of communities that don't pollute, and we will get together some political power. We will go to the governor, and we will say, there is federal money available. Let's do this. How do you? I'm finished for now.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Afroz Khan, and it's been an honor to serve for the last 6 years as your city councilor at large. My husband and I came in 2005, and we decided to stay here and grow our family here. My parents immigrated to this country from India and basically instilled in us some values that were really critical to them, and that is to be respectful, especially to our elders and our youth, to be humble, and to do hard work. And those were the three things that I took throughout anything I endeavored. It was through my volunteering experience that I was actually asked to run for city council back in 2017. Since then, I've been a strong advocate for knowing that there's best practices, whether we're doing them or other communities. I'm active in the MMA, the Massachusetts Municipal Association, and I'm really happy that we advocated for a single email address for all city councilors to be accessed to with one email address. So that was a great accomplishment I could say this council has done. So I ask for your consideration for one of your 5. Thank you.
Sure. So my name is Connie Preston, as Dave mentioned. So first I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight to take the time to learn about the candidates and the issues and make informed and educated decisions for November 7th. So my husband Tom and I moved here about 9 years ago with our 3 elderly rescue hounds. After a cancer diagnosis about 7.5 years ago, I chose to retire from my job as a biotech executive of 22 years to basically be more present in my own life and my own community. In my spare time, I do a lot of volunteering locally at Big Brother Big Sister, local food pantries, local nursing homes, as well as Spencer Pierce Little Farm. My volunteerism with the city started with the the tree commission, the tree commission, where I was chair for a number of years, as well as served on the charter commission. And in that experience, I realized that politics really runs in the backs of normal people like you and I. I had the time and energy to have impact, and I continue to have the time and energy to have impact, and that's why I'm running for re-election. I look forward to talking about the issues. Thank you.
Heather?
Thank you. So my name is Heather Shand. I am the current Ward 3 City Councilor. I am not a native. I am from Alabama. I grew up on a farm. My dad milked cows every day, and my mother taught first grade in the Selma Public School System. Proud person that went through the Selma Public School System. I graduated and went on to Georgia Tech, took my mechanical engineering degree from there, and in '95 I came up here. I followed my sister. I took my first job in Lynn at the GE. I have been there for 28 years. Don't like change, obviously. I came to Newburyport in 2006 because I was following my sister. Again, she had my niece, who was 2 years old at the time, and my niece is now a sophomore at RIT. Proud of her. I decided to run in 2017 because I thought the council needed some diversity. And I've been proudly serving Ward 3 for the last 6 years, and it has been an honor. This time around, I'm running at large because I really do want to work on some of the larger issues in the city. Zoning, the Brown School, NYS, affordable housing, all of those things that we need to be addressing to make our community as vibrant, even more vibrant than it is today. So I look forward to the further discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you for all your opening statements. So a few years ago, there was talk about the city starting its own ambulance service. Would you support that idea? Should the city revisit that subject? We'll start with Heather.
Knew I should have sat at the end. So I think when we first started talking about it, it was a financial piece that the fire department was interested in looking into up until, at this point in time, I'm not so sure that we need it. We've certainly had enough input from the fire chief and through the EMS folks at this point in time that it would probably be more of a burden because we would have to have more firefighters. And I think at this point, we don't have the funding that's needed for that. But at this point, I'm not so sure I would support it. We'd have to look at the numbers, and I would certainly be interested in hearing if that is still something that the city needs.
Yeah, so I was chatting with you before and realized you live on Summit, so maybe you threw that at me because it's one of the things on my door knocker. Listen, I had an experience last summer where I had to call 911 for my wife. We didn't know what was wrong, and it was a scary moment. She's fine. However, when you need an ambulance, you damn well better hope it gets there quick. And the fire department came, they were great, but it took 25 minutes for an ambulance to get there. And during the conversation with the polite firefighters, they explained to me that we share services. It was the Amesbury Fire ambulance that needed to come over. So I actually think it's one of the things I'd want to try and figure out how to do. I think Newburyport's big enough that we can support it. And I think over probably a 5 to 7 year term, you could make that maybe even a net positive from a revenue standpoint. So I think it's actually pretty important that we get that.
Does anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, thank you. I have to acknowledge the late George Rofe, who, when I got elected in 2017, before I even came on the council, left me a personal package where he advocated that we consider this. And at every meeting and conversation we had, he was there. And it is something I do think that, as both the previous folks had said, it is worth looking at the numbers, and it's worth revisiting, because if there could be something that does bring a net, but more than that, I think the service and the availability of that service is critical. So I am definitely worth thinking about reconsidering and looking at some data.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in on ambulances?
Yeah, just quickly, I think that we did look at it a couple of times. Yeah, Mr. Rofe was dogged in lobbying all of us. But even if the numbers don't work on a local level, that's probably something that we should look at on a regional level. This is a small area. We should be partnering, if we can, with other cities.
Anyone else? So Matt, aside from having the coolest political signs in town, I'm not sure why you're running. Can you tell me a little more about that? I haven't seen
Yeah.
it on anything, so I'd like to-
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I agree that they're the coolest political signs in town. Political signs don't get you elected, though, right? Yeah, why am I running? So first, I've kind of became involved in some local politics over the last 5 years. And to be honest, got frustrated along the way because I just felt like some of our city councilors weren't always listening to us. And some of them, quite honestly, I just thought, I was surprised that they were able to be there. I just felt like, I don't know, just didn't enjoy watching anything that they did in city council. None of them are here, by the way. That said, I had some extra time this year when my daughter left high school, no more sports games to go to. in an effort to maybe save my marriage so that my wife doesn't get sick of me, I decided this was the time and the place, quite honestly, to get involved in city politics. I'm passionate about Newburyport. I really love it. I want to see it get better, but I want to see it get better responsibly, and I now have the time to dedicate to it.
You want to rebut any of that at all? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not going to rebut any of that, but I just each of us has our own reasons for running. There can be people who want to run to be somebody, and I try to be somebody who's running to do something. I think being responsive to our constituents is incredibly important. Understanding what their needs are, asking them repeatedly, which I've always done as a counselor. When I could afford SurveyMonkey, it got a little more expensive. I would send out surveys about the garage, about plastic bags, about dog parks, about all sorts of things, and I've continued that, you know, when I'm in Market Basket, when I'm knocking on doors, when I'm talking to people. So for me, it's the issues that drive me to try to make Newburyport and keep it the best place it can be, but it's really also trying to channel what you all want us to do, and sometimes everyone's got different ideas. That can be hard, but that I think is the reason that I'm running.
Rose?
You know, I think I agree 100%, but one of the other things I really want to put a point on is sometimes we've come before the city council to advocate or talk about something we truly believed in. And being on the other side versus being in the seat we are, there is a distinction. I think sometimes we find ourselves making decisions that are not maybe where we would immediately go. And so for me, the reason that I am doing this, and I think many of us who are, have seen that you have to compromise, you have to be willing to give, and sometimes what you're deciding on, or maybe what the general people want, is not what maybe may have come initially as your first thought. And I think that's a real, sometimes very difficult to do.
One reason I'm running, I covered City Hall for 5 years for the Daily News. I know a lot about City Hall. I calculated I've been to close to 1,000 meetings in terms of meetings or planning boards or elections. So, you know, going to City Hall would be very comfortable for me. I wanted to bring up a couple ideas that I haven't heard before. I'm for a youth services center on Low Street, but I like an outdoor pool. As a journalist, I've covered many stories where people drowned because they couldn't swim. And for that reason, I want to give our kids a chance to learn how to swim. Also, adults in the summer could enjoy a pool. Another thing I'd like to introduce for thought is whether we could do something with the old C&J Transportation Center that's state-owned. We have a state housing authority, and I'd like to see the city work with the state housing authority to see if we could use this 5 acres of land for affordable housing.
Anyone else? No? Thank you. So, Dyke, speaking of political science, yours pretty much spells out what feels like your entire platform for the river. I mean, there's not much that the city council can do on that matter. It's more of a state and federal issue. So I was hoping, like, how
Well, I daren't complain about the editor's approach to this question. But I'm used to working with editors, so I'll try to wiggle around this one. I think, first of all, again, $1.5 billion, it's time for urgency. As I said, I'd like to see the mayor start a water quality commission, and so we could look into that, because a lot depends on our great city having a river that works. We have recreation, we have housing on the river, we have many restaurants. I mean, we have the boardwalk, the rail trail that Mayor Holliday pioneered as one of the most popular things in the town. I go down there and it's always full. So I think, you know, there are more things to do, and I can only talk about one issue at one time because I only have one mouth and one brain. So if I'm talking about the river in excess, someone raised their hand. But that's what I come out with first. I have a lot more to talk about, but Karen, I will accede to your note, and I will just say I have a lot to talk about, and I look forward to working with people at City Hall, and I know them all. I know all the department heads.
Yeah, I just want to chime in. I mean, I really love Dyke's passion on this. I have a boat down on the water, And it was the most vile place on the face of, certainly on the East Coast, I think this. I mean, there was multiple times where there's hypodermic needles floating by. I mean, it's really, really bad. So I love Dyke's passion on this. It's really tremendous. But Dave, I agree with you. I think we need to put a lot more pressure on our local representatives and our state representatives and our federal representatives to fix this problem. It's a big problem, and but unfortunately it's not something that an individual city councilor I think is going to be able to tackle.
Yeah, just to add, we have State Representative Shand here. I know Bruce Tarr, our senator, has been very active on this, and those of us that regularly talk to our federal delegation, and I know the mayor does, and past mayors have, and several of us have connections to Moulton, Warren, and Markey. We need to keep pushing that. I love Dyke's focus on this. I'll do him one up. I do like the community pool idea. I think the rusted old rail bridge, just because Dyke's so focused on the river, I'm going to jump on that bandwagon. That rusty old rail bridge, let's try to do something with it. Let's be, these ideas may take 20 years, 30 years, may never happen. We used to have a community pool right down on the riverfront, right where the Tuscan Grill is, Black Cow. That was a community pool back in the 30s, so I don't think that's that crazy.
I think, Connie, you want to say something, or just okay. Jared, you're go.
Yeah, actually, that was my mother's career in the early 70s. She was at the Army Corps of Engineers the first time we had to clean up the Merrimack River when it was one of the most polluted waterways in the United States. And the communities upriver were just as poor then. She then was at the Merrimack River Watershed Council and the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission in Haverhill. So I grew up with this, literally. We would take canoe trips and all that. Look, the way that you're going to break this is not by begging or talking about it. It's actually litigation. The Clean Water Act is what broke the ice in the early 70s when my mom was working on this. And that's when the federal government came to the rescue, because obviously Lowell and Lawrence and Haverhill didn't have the money to do wastewater treatment plants. Well, they don't have the money now to do combined sewer overflow separation. So you have to create a condition where there's a consent decree, and then we can go to the federal congressional delegation, and they have the ability to get the money.
All right, so this is a question for everyone. Is there anyone here against moving Newburyport Youth Services to 59 Low Street? Sure. Is there anyone here against moving Newburyport Youth Services to 59 Low Street? Is that raising your hand? Yes, you're against it?
I'm not saying that. I'm looking for an opportunity to say something. Okay.
So why is it taking so long? 2 years, right? They've been homeless for 2 years. Why is it taking so long? If everyone, I've talked to other city councilors, other candidates, no one has said they're against it. So why is it taking so long? Jerry, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I think because I was on the council before when this came up, and I'm one of the ones that originally opposed it because my first choice was the Brown School for various reasons we don't have to get into now. But by early 2021, it was clear, really, to put a fine point on it, youth services didn't want to be at the Brown School. So that was the end of that. So then we talked about, all right, well, where are you going to go next? And so we spent time on that. My second choice, I wasn't the only one, was the Kent Street Playground, which is flat as a pancake, dry as a bone. We own it. And you could fit 15,000 square feet rather than just the 5,900 square feet we're going to get at 59 Low. But there aren't the votes for it. There weren't the votes for it. So at the last minute, I did, in preparation for tonight, I went back, I looked at the minutes and emails with Councilor Shand and incoming Councilor Cameron in December of 2021. We did try one last gasp, and we couldn't buy it because we hadn't committed to who was going to use it, and then I was out of office. In the last 2 years, I think there's been some brinksmanship, and I think some unwillingness for councilors to accept and respect that you need 8 votes. And the fact is, the only place we're going to get 8 votes is 59 Low Street. But to get those 8 votes, you need a budget. That's the other issue. You can't just say, okay, 59 Low Street, sky's the limit. To bond, you need 8 votes, and that's what hasn't happened yet, that discussion.
I think you were heading in for
Great, thank you. So one of the very first things that I did when I came into office is I put through an ordinance to change the zoning. So the 59 Low Street sits in the industrial park, and recreational uses are not zoned in the industrial park. And so one of the very first things I did was to submit an ordinance to rezone the industrial park for recreational uses. And frankly, that needs a supermajority as well. That needs 8, and we could not get that through. I personally am very committed to youth services at 59 Low Street. We've done all the studies that need to be done. We have looked at the wetlands. We've looked at the soil samples. There are no question marks left about it. Yes, we don't have a full budget for it, and I am extraordinarily supportive. I don't have a blank check for anything, but I am willing to put a serious commitment toward youth services in that space. I think a very important piece of it is the fact that we own that property. You know, we can't buy something else and spend the millions of dollars to build a youth services building. The property makes sense. We need to move it forward. I think we all know who's really dragging their feet on the council with this. They aren't sitting here today, but we have to move that forward. We have to find compromise. That's been a major problem in this council, and you know, we need to find a way to get to 8. I'm very hopeful that in the next council we can get there, and I applaud all of you for creating the pressure that you have to make sure that we do get to 8. Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is an issue that's been out there since 2019, when the first time we talked about Low Street, maybe even before that. So the previous council before this one could have done something, and we didn't. We didn't buy it when we all knew it was a good decision to make. It got mucked up. It got mucked up in the concept of putting a conservation restriction on the property before buying it. We had to go through so much in trying to really get a simple purchase done, which at the end of the day we did do. We did a simple purchase without a conservation restriction, meaning it could be done. And what concerns me is the person asking for the CR may ask for it again. I don't know. But that really concerns me. To get the project at 59 Low Street, we have to be committed, we have to make the commitment, and we need to move forward.
Anyone else?
May I rebut?
Well, I want to get Ed first.
Yeah, just history is history. Where we're at now, I think all the questions have been answered, as Councilor Khan said. I've been in meetings where councilors will ask about stormwater. The city engineer will say, you don't need to be concerned about it. It's a slab, every place gets rain. Then 5 minutes later, well, I'm concerned about the stormwater questions. Same answer, you know, 3 times in one meeting. And if you don't want to vote for it, just give your reasons for not voting for it, and don't run the rest of us through the ringer. But we'll get the cost estimates back shortly. The mayor is targeting some, you know, we're for the middle ground. We're not getting the Taj Mahal, and we're not getting a hovel. We're getting, I think, a building that will be responsive to their needs. That may come in for $5.7 million, a little more, a little less. I think that's certainly money worth spending. Our youth really deserve it. It's a great location. There's been a ton of looking at various sites. And yeah, maybe their Cushing Park, I think, is a good site for something someday. Certainly needs improvement. But I think 57 Low, we need to do it. We need to get it done. And I hope that that will happen in this or the next council.
Is there anyone who hasn't chimed in yet want to chime in? Heather?
So I'm all in on 57 Low Street. I have been since we had the opportunity to buy the land. So to Ed's point, we will be getting the information from the mayor. They are working on the design now. So hopefully when we see what it comes in at, then we can start discussing what the funding situation needs to be. But I agree, we do need, our youth do deserve their building. We've been saying this for years now. I think if you look back over the years, I know when I was in school, we didn't have to worry about active shooters. And I think the youth in our community have a lot more on their minds these days than just what we used to worry about, you know, tornadoes and fire drills. So they do deserve the building. So hopefully we get it done this next term.
Jared, did you want to say something else, or are you good?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the speakers made a veiled reference to me, but I did want a conservation restriction at one point because 2/3 of the site are wetlands. They're delineated wetlands. Not a conservation restriction on the site of where the building is in the parking lot now. It was the surrounding area. And I held to that, and at one point I had the agreement of the mayor, but when it went to a public meeting, staff changed their minds, reneged on that. We then tried again, where Councilor Tantar at the time said, okay, I can sponsor with that. I said, fine, let's try it again. I think that was winter. But it was bitterly opposed by others who didn't want to have a conservation restriction. But I feel I've been vindicated on that because the design now is outside of the wetlands. There's no construction proposed in the wetlands, just as I said. That's the law, that's the right policy. All you have to do is look at Market Square to understand our drainage problems. You don't build on wetlands.
Rose?
I just want to clarify, the design was never to build on the wetlands, so I just want to, we could let it go, but there's a lot of record of this. But I think I just want to end with the fact that we do need to get something in place and work with what we have and listen to the experts, the ones who actually make these decisions, which are not us politicians. Even though we all come with an expertise, I'm an electrical engineer, I work with power efficiency, but at the end of the day, a Froze cannot come and tell us how we should do our municipal aggregation plan because I am elected to maybe think of other things as well. So we have to listen to third party, to other experts, to administration, and I'll end it at that.
Anyone else? Okay, move on. So, should Mayor Reardon reintroduce a split tax rate? Last time he did, the council turned him down. Ed,
So the question is, should the mayor reintroduce the split tax rate?
should he try again?
Well, he's right here, so I hope he's listening. I've been meaning to call and ask. Yeah, I think I think it should be on the table. I think it should be discussed. I think the last time there wasn't a robust enough conversation. We absolutely have to have the business community, but residents as well. And for those who are wondering what a split tax rate is, in our community, and other communities do have a split tax rate, but in our community, if I'm Stephen Karp and I own a gazillion, dollars worth of real estate in downtown Newburyport, our tax rate, which is 10 something or 11 something right now, it changes every year, so I never have it quite memorized. He is paying the same tax rate as Ed Cameron, homeowner with my wife, so we're at the same rate. The problem here is that commercial values across the board have dropped and residential values have been high. So Stephen Karp is going to get a hell of a break if he's paid at the same rate as Ed Cameron and all of you who are residents in town. So I think it's worth a discussion. Many, many, many communities have adopted this over time in Massachusetts. So the basic question is, how do we portion our municipal costs fairly? And I think looking at it is worthwhile doing. It was about to pass 10-1 last year, and then all of a sudden it didn't. Again, I think it's worth a discussion, and I know others from the ward council races have talked about that as well. So I think it's certainly worth a discussion.
Connie had her hand up first.
Yeah, thank you. So I was a yes on the split tax rate last year, but it wasn't without a lot of consideration. We certainly heard very robustly from the business community against it. But frankly, for me, I was only a yes for the 1 year because of the fact that the assessed values had gone up so very high, and the average tax rate, or the average tax bill, was going to go up so enormously for the residents. However, the businesses were actually going to pay less. And so what I was looking to do was to just even that out a little bit. And so that we were still actually going to be paying more than we had the year previous. And the businesses were going to basically stay flat. And that to me made sense. Again, just for that 1 year, because it was a very special circumstances last year. I think to consider it again this year, which is what the question is, we need to look at the numbers. We need to understand what the tax rate's going to do for the average resident versus what it's going to do for the businesses. We can't, we need more businesses to carry more of our tax rate. And right now, frankly, we pay 90% of the taxes in the city as residents. And we need to find a way to get more businesses in town. And obviously having a split tax rate isn't terribly business friendly. So we need to be very thoughtful about that and make sure that we're being as fair as possible to both sides. But I was a definite yes last year because it made sense to me to make that more even for all of us.
Yeah, it's easy to just say, hey, let's just make the businesses pay more. But as you pointed out, we only have about 90% of our tax dollars comes from the revenue from our property taxes. We have kind of a fragile commercial base here, right? You've got the industrial park, which I think we need to look at rezoning so we can get more businesses down there and maybe look at a split tax rate down the road. But most of the, it's easy to blame the guy that lives in Nantucket, right? However, most of those leases that the small business owners, that they lease from him, they're triple net leases. So if you raise the taxes to Carp, it's not coming out of his pocket, it's coming out of the small business owners downtown. So you really have to be careful about that, I think. It's so easy to just say, hey, let's pass it on. But, Newburyport is not Beverly, right? Beverly has a huge tax base of commercial properties. We don't. It's a small percentage. So we have to treat them nicely and I think we have to look at it every year. I mean, I think we absolutely should look at it every year, but I think I wouldn't just.
Well, what do you mean by treat them nicely? What does that mean?
Well, hey, how many miles are we from New Hampshire? You could be a commercial property down in the industrial park and move your business to New Hampshire, given the opportunity, and pay less taxes, right? So I think it's great to have a commercial base here, but we're just different than a lot of other communities.
Rose, did you?
Yes, thank you. So when I came on to the City Council, went to the MMA meeting, this was a conversation in one of those sessions on the split tax rate, single tax rate. There's 352 towns and cities in the Commonwealth. And of those, if you look at the percent that actually have a split tax rate, most of them are a little less than half of them. And again, when I came back and asked our finance director, they said, well, the best practice is really to have a certain percent of commercial entities to really justify doing the split tax rate. So I heard that and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. We had a unique situation last year, and I voted against splitting it and keeping it a single rate, because part of it is there's always going to be a variance in how things get appraised, where properties will end up having to pay based on the formula that's applied. What you see in one instant doesn't mean that that's going to be a static situation. And I think we're seeing right now, when the tax rate comes out soon, that we actually made a good decision to not go with the split.
Anyone else? Jared?
Yeah, I mean, I want to echo what Councilor Preston said, which is that 90% of all of the taxes are paid from residential property. So it's just out of whack. I mean, also what Matt Kane said is correct. Yes, we have a special situation here, but that doesn't mean you should just slavishly always have a unified tax rate. That doesn't make any sense. And this is not 1982 anymore in Newburyport. We're doing okay. We don't have to have kid gloves with all of the commercial property owners. And it is true, they do have triple net leases, New England Development, but that's not our problem. That has to be negotiated. And if New England Development is overcharging their tenants, well, then that will be adjusted in the market. But we can't just sacrifice the interests of the residents because of a deal that New England Development has.
Anyone else? Oh, Heather?
Sure. So I also was one that voted for it last year, not for the split tax rate, but to keep it the same. Reason being, we did hear a lot from the business community, the mom and pop shops, which does mean a lot for our downtown businesses. And I think we also want to remind folks that we also pulled money from free cash to help offset some of the increases that we were seeing in the property taxes as well. It is we do look at this every year, and to Councilor Preston's point, it is a long, serious discussion that we have, and it is something we'll have every year. It's not like I wouldn't say it's a carte blanche, we just always go one way, but it is a good hearing that we have with Budget and Finance, and we have a lot of discussion with the Finance Director, so it's not like it's never going to change. But last year was a special year with the assessment values being what they were. So,
Dyke?
Well, lest I be considered a one-issue candidate, I would like read into the record to augment Ed's point. The tax rate is $10.74 per thousand. And I spent the time looking that up this afternoon, lest someone cold cock me with, well, what is a tax rate anyway? That didn't happen. I am putting that into the record. That is a tax rate. Ed, thank you for opening up this level of discussion.
So Heather, I know you mentioned a little bit during your opening statement, but Can you talk a little more about why you're running for office? I mean, do you have higher aspirations?
No, I don't. I like my day job.
That was a simple one. Anyone else want to comment on that one?
I can assure you, I have, outside of protecting Newburyport, and I'm really passionate about that, yeah, I ain't quitting my day job, and I have the political climate in the country is horrible. I mean, God bless those people up in Maine tonight and what they've gone through. I mean, that is not an arena I would ever want to jump into.
Did you want to say something?
Yes, I want to assure people, I do not look for higher state or federal office, but I do say this. I will always be younger than Joe Biden.
Stole the words right out of my mouth.
Ed?
Thanks, Dave. And I know you were being facetious about higher aspirations, but I would encourage anybody in the audience, and I know we've got a lot of school committee folks here, we've got ward committee, ward folks that are running. We have a brilliantly led campaign by the new Ward 3, Heath Granis will be the counselor because he has no opposition, so well done, Heath, and a whole bunch of others here as well. We need you to help this be a good community. We've got boards and commission members here, my wife included, who's on the Affordable Housing Trust, and you know, we can joke about aspirations and whatnot, but you're really the people that make this tick. And please have some aspirations, run for school committee, help out with a campaign, volunteer for a board and commission, go for city council, run against us in 2 years if those of us who win, run for mayor someday. I know the mayor doesn't want to hear that, but you know, please be involved.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I can assure you that I will never run for mayor as well. I am retired for a reason. It does not seem like the easiest job, I'm not going to lie. But, you know, for me, I think I just want to echo what Councilor Cameron said. So I had no political aspirations whatsoever. I'm not terribly political by nature to begin with. But it all started with me, as I said earlier, from the Tree Commission, and it seemed like such an innocuous thing for me at the time. But it really did make me realize, you know, how city government works and the importance of people getting involved and how much every one of you sitting in your seats right now could be up here and could be running for city council. If you'd asked me 5 years ago if I would have run for city council, I would have told you absolutely, positively no way. And look at me here today, and I will tell you I enjoy it. The ability to have impact is enormous. So get involved. This city really does run on the backs of volunteers. Find your way into boards and commissions if you haven't already. And, you know, who knows? Maybe you'll be up here in 2 years. Thanks.
Anyone else? No? So again, Jared, can you talk a little bit more about why you're running? I mean, were you asked to run by folks? Was there any kind of like push?
I wouldn't call it a push. Yeah, I'll tell you why I'm running again. Look, I was burned out after 8 years. It was an intense 8 years. I think Ward 2 is the most difficult ward. I was the president the last 2 years. Then Mayor Holliday and I had COVID those last 2 years. I literally chaired. Yeah. We had COVID to deal with. I literally chaired 100 Zoom meetings, and you know, I'd had enough, and I felt, you know, a new mayor is coming in. There were 4 of us. I wasn't the only one that left the council. It's time for someone else. But why am I running again? Well, I stayed out of it. I had various people say, you know, they're really having trouble in the city council getting anything done, especially anything that takes 8 votes. And I said, oh, I'm out of it, I'm out of it, I'm out of it. And then finally I got frustrated. And around February I said, you know what, I can do this. I have the time. I'll get back in, and we'll see what happens.
Anyone else want to respond to that? No? Oh, go ahead. Frost?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point about how do we get things done. We do need 8 votes. We talk about that a lot. You know, that's kind of our way of, and I don't think it's any different. Like, I don't think this last term, having now spent finishing 3 terms, getting 8 votes wasn't easy previously too, serving with other folks here. It's just the nature of the work we do. It's not easy. You hear different perspectives, you have different opinions. But the one thing that I will say, and that's been really nice, is, you know, having a level of treating each other civilly and being able to have respectful discourse, because the public is watching. You know, we need to hold ourselves to a standard that we could treat each other, be professional. We take professionalism to our work. Why can't we do it here in City Council for the people? And that's what I really look forward to and enjoy, when we could sit down, and that gets us moving together towards solutions.
Anyone else? No? Okay. This is a question for the incumbents. Unless I got this wrong, the council is expected to vote on Councilor Z's proposal for short-term rental units regulations on Monday. Do you support this proposal, yes or no? Who wants to go first? Rose, you had your hand up first.
Yes, I support it. I think this is actually a very good example of compromise. None of us will say that this is what we envisioned it to look like. And again, that goes to the statement that compromise is made when not everyone is happy. And I remember a former city councilor telling me that. And it's just one of the things that you realize, because the stakes are high. If we don't pass something, things are not going to get better the way they are right now. And we all recognize that. And I really appreciate the fact that the only thing is, I will add, this is a really difficult thing to understand. So I personally have been trying to put together explanations and talk to people on the phone. I put my phone out there on Facebook. Could be scary, but it's out there. And I've been telling people, call me. I'll walk you through it. I'll explain it. Because there's a lot of misinformation. And to be honest, the way we write zoning, it's not easy for everyone to understand.
Connie, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. So I also support it. I'll be very honest, I don't love it, but that is what compromise is, right? I don't think any one of us, any one of the 11 of us, and hopefully 8 of us, love the legislation that's on the table. But at the same token, we have to give in to each side. We have to find compromise to move something forward. This is another one of those examples of something that takes a magic 8 and are so hard for us to get to. And I think, as Councilor Khan has said, like, it is about us coming to compromise and finding the right solution, finding a way forward. We have to have something in place. The city deserves it. And I think we should be proud of ourselves if we can finally get this through. The city council, certainly not I've only been on for 2 years, but the city council has been working over this for 6 years now. I mean, that in itself shows that this is not an easy solution either way around. And I really do hope that we can find the compromise and get that done. Thank you.
So Edward, yes or no?
I generally am in favor of the ordinance, with the exception of the so-called investor or non-owner occupied units. Last year we came very close to the magic 8. We had the magic 7, which was only 1 short. I've listened carefully to other people's arguments about this, but I do think our constituents very much are not in favor of investor properties. And again, this is somebody that's essentially running a hotel in a residential neighborhood because they're not living there, and various people are coming in. And I've heard from people near Cushing Park, Water Street, Boardman Street, Warren, and I've got concerns about that. We're going to hash it out on the floor. It'll be, get your popcorn ready, and 7 o'clock Monday night, we'll see where it goes. I do want to support owner-occupied, somebody having an STRU while they're at home and renting out a room, somebody going away for a couple of weeks and renting it out for a couple of weeks, and again, they live in that home year-round. But I do have concerns about neighborhood impact and housing availability if we allow these investor properties.
So, hold on, please don't do that, okay? Thank you. So Ed, you're a maybe, is that?
I'm a maybe, Dave.
Okay. Wait, let the incumbent go
I'm
first.
sorry. I didn't use-
So I would echo what Councilor Cameron said. I have concerns with the investor units as well. I do think neighborhood impact is something that's happening in Ward 3. I mean, I've been in people's homes where they show me at the backside of their windows where their child sleeps saying, hey, there was a party here, and it happens every weekend. It does have a neighborhood impact, and I think it is a detriment. I think people want to move into neighborhoods and know their neighbors. I don't think they want to move into neighborhoods and live next to a hotel. It's a business. So like I said, I agree with Councilor Cameron. We do need to get something passed. So and also agree, have your popcorn ready.
Matt?
No, I agree with what Heather just said, and I just wanted to point out something. So in talking with a lot of people, I was actually at somebody's house in Ward 2 a few weeks ago, and I didn't really have a strong opinion on this because I live in Ward 6, right? Nobody really rents houses. But after listening to these people that have really gone through some trauma, right? I mean, they can't park outside their house. It's just, I just want to use an example of where I thought I knew, I thought I had an opinion, and I changed my opinion on it because people don't want to move next to a hotel. They didn't move next to a hotel. And I think Councilor Zeid's proposal, just so everyone's clear that hasn't been spelled out tonight, is to basically take those investor-owned properties and give them a grace period of several years to get out. We're not saying, hey, sell your property today. So I think it's a fair approach, but certainly the people at Ward 2, I know the Aquavivas would not want a hotel next to their house.
I believe it's
That's for
2030,
sure,
right?
right?
That's the grace period? Is
What's that?
right? It's 2030, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, I think, well,
6 years.
Okay.
6-7 years.
Jared, did you want to talk about this, or you good?
No, it's okay.
Dyke, do you want to talk about this?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Anyone else want to talk about this? Okay, that was quicker than I thought. All right. At this moment, the Citizens for Responsible Education is holding a forum at the Newburyport Elks Club. What are your thoughts on the CRE? I think, Connie, you're up first.
All right. So I frankly am not at all supportive of the folks at CRE. I very much support social emotional learning. I have absolutely no interest in book banning. I think that, parents should have a very strong role in the raising of their children. But I think the schools have a very strong role in helping kids to see the world holistically. And I think, frankly, as it pertains to the books, so to say, their parents should have conversations with their kids about what kids should and shouldn't be reading. And if parents aren't comfortable with that, then the children shouldn't be reading them. But that doesn't mean that the book shouldn't be available to other children. I think it's so important that these kids have a breadth of knowledge and have the ability to decide who they are for themselves and not be limited as to who they can be. And ultimately, I think, this CRE, I think they love their children just as much as everybody else does, but I think they're very focused on how to limit what their children are exposed to. But at the same token, they don't understand that they're limiting what other kids are exposed to, and those same things could be very much a positive for those children. So I don't support what CRE is doing, and frankly, I would really like to see them not get onto school committee, because I do feel like they are looking to really take over and really stop the process of social emotional learning in the schools. Thank you.
Anyone else? Matt, you were first.
Yeah. I'm so surprised that Brian Callahan is here, because I thought for sure he would be at the CRE meeting tonight. But no, hey, an opportunity to really thank people like Brian that are on the school committee. That's not a job I would want. This can get heated, but when it comes to your kids, it can get really heated. So I give those guys a lot of credit. Yeah, it's so funny. I got an email from somebody who said, I heard you're for banning books, and I quickly wrote back to them 5 different times to make sure they got the email and say, absolutely not. It doesn't seem like it's a good organization. I think it's important to listen to all of the parents' perspective as a school committee member, but absolutely not supporting all that. I think Connie eloquently put it.
Jared, you had your hand up for a second?
Yeah, just quickly, first of all, it really is a school committee issue. We have an elected school committee, and I think a lot of people forget how much we rely on them. Also on the budget. By the time the school budget gets to the city council, we can only vote it up or down. So, these school committee races are incredibly important. But on the merits, from what I know about CRE, and I haven't met with them personally, they have 2 things that I think just don't resonate in Newburyport and have no chance. One is banning books. That's a hard sell. That's not going to happen. And the other is, many of the books that I understand they want to ban, it seems that there's at least a whiff of homophobia there. And, that's just not going to sell. And, the whole country really has moved beyond that long ago. So I don't think it has any legs, but the school committee is the one who has to protect us.
Froze?
This is a topic that's been, I would say, not just happening here. It's across the country, and there's real modeled level of activism. I would say the one thing that, as a city councilor, obviously I said there's a difference. There's the resident, you're the advocate, you're coming before a body like ours. When I sat in the city council seat and we actually had a communication that some of the counselors wanted to send a committee from CRE. I was very uncomfortable and wanted to receive and file. And it's something that you see as counselors, what was I trying to do? And it's very hard because we want every single communication, every single resident information to get some time. But on some things, it could be very hurtful. It could hurt a population of our community. And sitting in this seat sometimes means you have to do certain things that are uncomfortable. And I remember that meeting vividly. It was not an easy one. But at some point, there are realms for this conversation. And I am grateful for the superintendent, the school administration, the school committee. They had to deal with this. And they, I thought, did it in an elegant manner. And I think there's a lot of things we did learn overall on this during this whole time. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ed?
Yeah, let me be unequivocal about this. CRE certainly has a First Amendment right to be as bigoted, racist, homophobic as they want to be. As an elected official and as a private person, let me speak out very strongly about this. This is definitely a national movement. If you look at their website, make sure you scrub for viruses afterwards. But it's tied into a whole right-wing movement. And yes, I'd like to be nonpartisan, but there's definitely a right-wing movement that is opposed to gay marriage, that is opposed to supporting trans kids, that is quite frankly, racist. And religious bigotry is a part of this as well. We were Zoom bombed by anti-Semitic neo-Nazis.
I remember.
In the city
We wrote
council
about it.
meeting when we were discussing a resolution about the events in the Middle East. So it's out there. We should not give it air. I completely agree with Councilor Khan. Because somebody from CRE writes a letter to the city council, we're going to have a meeting about it. No, we're not. We're going to receive and file it. I don't want to give them oxygen. And I hope the rest of you will join me in speaking unequivocally, and please vote in the school committee race, because two people who do favor those ideas are running. And when the youth services had the youth dance a year or so ago, many of us stood up for that. And we got hate email from the Mass Family Alliance calling us groomers, pedophiles, really stupid stuff. But these people are deadly serious. And when I say deadly, I mean deadly, and we need to stand up to that.
Hey.
Dave, that actually did deserve applause.
Anyone else? All right. Oh, yeah, okay. So this is for everyone. What are your thoughts about on Whittier's proposal to build a new school?
Ooh, I'll start. I think this is something,
Sorry, I'll say it again. What are your thoughts on Whittier's proposal to build a new school?
So Whittier is our vocational school, and we have 29 Newburyport students there right now. They have come to us with a $400 million proposal to build a new school, where Newburyport would be responsible for $67 million of that. So think about that. And the ask is that we all vote on this January 23rd from 11 o'clock to 7 o'clock, no early voting. This is to try and make sure that Newburyport, with 29 kids, think about the ratio of 67 million with 29 kids. Now, I support vocational education and 100%. I work in an industry where we absolutely need people with these kind of skills, but I think we need to take a hard look at what we are being asked to pay for here. And I appreciate Whittier's position where they need to get a new school built, but I think they do need to take a harder look at what a $400 million school is going to cost all of the communities that are going to be asked to vote for this.
So Ed, I saw you dramatically hit your head when you asked that question. So why did you do that?
I echo everything Councilor Shan said. I hope there can be some, cost cutting by Whittier. A $450 or whatever million, that's an amazing school. I mean, we did our new schools, refurbished our schools, and I know that was a few years ago, but it was a lot less. I'm hoping if anybody from the State House is listening, that we can find ways for the Mass School Building Authority to pitch in more money, but bring down the cost. And I know every community, as Councilor Shan mentioned, has to vote on this, so it's not just us. And I know these, conversations are happening because I read the Lawrence Eagle Tribune and I know what's going on in Haverhill. But yeah, I mean, I think vocational schools are great, and we have an excellent one, but that's a lot of money.
I think, Matt, you were first.
I was just going to say, I mean, I've just recently learned about this, and it's definitely one of the scariest things that we're faced with if it just goes through like it is. I think the mayor has started to assemble a team of the other 11 cities here, so hopefully we can create some sort of coalition to go back and say, do we need a school that costs $500 million, number one? But number two, look at getting more funding from the state. You know, if we had to all of a sudden pony up $32 million, $69 million over the life of the loan, that's almost $1,800 per person in Newburyport, and it would be devastating to all these other projects that we're talking about we want to accomplish. So this is a really tricky one, and we're going to need to keep our eyes on it because everybody here that's on the council or will be, our hands are tied really right now.
Dyke?
Well, if I were on the city council, I'd consult with former Mayor Holliday because, as I understand, she's active with the school. She's a knowledgeable person. And if this ever gets more serious, I think Mayor Holliday could lend some light to this. So if this moves forward, you know, as I understand, you're going to be on the board, and, you know, we can learn more, and I can learn more. And we also, I think, recognize vocational education is very important, and we want to be part of the larger whole. So I think there are a lot of things to do. And again, as a city councilor, I would seek more answers for a wide range.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, you know, when the Whittier was founded, Newburyport had a lot more students that were going into vocational fields. And maybe it made sense to have an apportionment of costs, capital costs, based on population. But obviously it doesn't now, because you heard the numbers of our enrollment. But the solution here, and it sounds like the mayor's office is working on it, and others too, is through the State House and through partnering with others. I mean, essentially just hitting Newburyport taxpayers with over $60 million is just a non-starter.
Anyone else? No? This is a question for the incumbents. I'll start with you, Rose. Have you ever voted for something that you opposed personally because you knew it was something your residents wanted or needed? Can I have an example if you did that?
Well, yeah, I have, right, it was the retail marijuana. That was I got elected, and my first topic was we were hit with this, it was actually a really difficult situation because the ballot referendum in 2016 said if you were a yes community, meaning your community voted over 50% in favor of retail marijuana, then you had to be amenable to them being in your community unless you got zoning in place. If you did not want to have one, then you would have to go back with the ballot referendum. So that was the situation. I first did want to go right to the ballot referendum, but residents were saying we already voted in 2016, and it was a very well kind of attended. It was a presidential election year, and everyone voted in favor. So I was told, just make sure you zone for it properly. So that was something that, as someone, and I've mentioned many times on the floor, I don't even drink alcohol, that this was not something that I was going to be, that I use or would be using. And at that time, I remember being in favor of us zoning for retail marijuana. So that was an issue that I would say personally, when you asked about the personal. And we all know how that story went several years later.
Heather?
I think the one I would be a little disappointed in myself for having voted for would have been the Brown School overlay. I think it's, I know at the time we were discussing zoning to make sure we're protecting the residents from any kind of intrusion of large-scale development, but I think it's basically hamstrung us in what we can do with the property right now. And I think with the RFI responses we got back recently, we are going to have to relook at that if we want to do any kind of senior affordable housing there with the numbers that we received.
You're up, Ed.
I've had a lot of votes, but it's hard to actually pick one. But I'm going to go with the topical one that I think I voted for eventually, and that is the corner of Story Ave and Low, where the CVS is now. It was a couple of homes there. Gosh, I can barely remember what it was like before, but several of us, this was probably 2012 or so, were opposed to those sort of retail strip mall buildings there. Myself, Tom O'Brien, and Bob Cronin, we were eventually persuaded by various sort of changes to it to allow it. Atria moved in there as well. I still think it's I'm not a fan of strip malls. I'm very much looking forward to rezoning the Story Ave Plaza. Maybe we can make that mixed use, so some retail. I know everyone wants the Kmart to be a Trader Joe's, so if anyone, that ship sailed a long
Whole
time
Foods.
ago. But we can do more there, and a lot of communities are doing that, so it's both apartments or condos with some retail. Right now, it's just parking lots, and it's empty, and it's not doing anybody any good. But I think that commercial area around there, I think it's just very intense, and I'm reminded of it because I had a hard time. I had to stop at CVS on my way to this forum, and it was a challenge getting out of there in one piece. So that was one that I've always that's kind of stuck with me.
Connie?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to use the marijuana example as well. It's no secret I was actually involved with the opt-in movement, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And, I very much wanted us to have retail cannabis in town, not because I'm a big cannabis user, but because I wanted the tax money from it. I wanted to shuffle it directly to the schools. But frankly, we had a referendum, and the referendum voted it down. And it's not about what Connie Preston thinks. It's what Councilor Preston perceives for the community. And I don't know more than the community does. If the community doesn't want it, then we should not have it. And that's why I chose to vote down in this council about moving forward with retail marijuana in town.
Matt, you want to respond to something?
So there's no secret that if you haven't figured it out, that's one of my number one issues why I'm here. So I was passionate about one thing. It wasn't whether we were going to have marijuana shops downtown or whether we weren't going to have them downtown. It was that a large number of residents signed a petition, over 1,800. And if you remember at the time, and I know you remember, Dave,
Don't count on it.
there was month after month after month of debate about this. And I was blown away that even after 1,800 signatures, that some of our city councilors thought that they knew better than the voters did. That's why I'm here. We don't know any better than the voters do. And that's just the hallmark of being a U.S. citizen. So here I am. Vote for me.
All right, anyone else? Jared?
Yeah, I mean, in my 8 years, there was a great many things that wasn't my position that ended up in the legislation, and I voted for it because that was where we ended up. I'll just start from the very beginning. In 2013, when I first ran, I put in all my flyers that I thought we should have rental housing built along with the central waterfront. And I remember there was an innkeeper on Market Street who threw me out when he heard that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, it's my opinion. I mean, the other councilors who are running can blow smoke up your, but, we need revenue. But in the course of the next 8 years, it was clear that there was no consensus for any buildings on the central waterfront. So I gave it up, and gladly, because it was much more important to settle a 50-year dispute. 50 years. And we achieved that. So, and that's why I'm running, is that I did see, we didn't all love each other on the city council. Are you kidding me? And the city definitely was divided before. It's divided now. It always will be. But we got 8 votes.
Anyone else? Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the Brown School issue is stuck on the gymnasium. I mean, is that true?
Yes.
You want to talk about that, Heather?
It is. I think it's one of the things that we do need to address, whether we keep the gym or not. And I know this is part of I know everyone's called it the divorce between NYS and the Brown School, but I don't know if that divorce has actually happened yet. I know there's some folks that want to keep the gym in the neighborhood, and there's the idea that $500,000 can do that. We have numbers from EGA that say it will take 1.2 just to get it into a workable condition again. We need to take a hard look at where that money would come from and how would it impact our ability to do senior affordable at the Brown School. So yeah, the gym is a holdup, and I think we do need to start looking at the actual numbers, and if we were to keep it, where would that money come from?
Dyke, you had your hand up first.
I think as far as the Brown School goes, we absolutely have to keep the gymnasium. I mean, it's in walking distance for many youngsters. And, you know, boys and girls, they need a place to go. They need Saturday afternoon, even if it's not a structured event. I mean, I played basketball. My son and daughter played basketball inside. I would hate to see the gymnasium go. I would. We can figure out something with affordable housing upstairs, or not, but we must keep the gymnasium.
Connie?
Yeah, thanks. So I do think the gymnasium is a wonderful community asset. However, I think it's not a priority over affordable housing. We desperately need housing stock. Hard stop right there. But we also desperately need affordable housing. I attended last night a housing coalition at the YWCA that was really fantastic, and just really wonderful energy around people trying to find creative solutions to create more housing and affordable housing in the city. But this is one that, frankly, because again, the magic 8 number, right? We need to get to 8 on this. And this is one that I am willing to compromise on in any direction, frankly, to get something done. The Brown School is an asset for this city, hard stop. It is crumbling. Every day that goes by that we can't find a compromise to get something done at the Brown School, we are failing the city. So I am willing to keep or lose the gym. I am willing to maximize affordable housing or compromise somewhere in the middle to get something done at the Brown School. We have to stop creating roadblocks for ourselves. We have to stop finding ourselves in corners and find compromise in the middle to get something done at the Brown School as soon as possible.
Rose, I think you had your hand up first and then Matt.
Yeah, on this one, the gym itself, at the Brown School, when it was open, it wasn't really available to everyone. So I just want to let folks know it wasn't already a community gym. It was locked quite a bit of times, and I don't know who had the keys, but I know some groups would go in and play basketball. The other thing, though, for those who live in that area, the Salvation Army keeps their gym open for the kids and the youth, which is not that far away. To me, at the end of the day, and we see these in the proposals that came out from the RFI, Request for Information, that to really accomplish something that the city would not have to put as much money or any money into, did not include having the gym there. I mean, and that's data, that's reality. You can look it up right now and see it. So at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what are the actual needs of the community? And then, knowing that we have NYS, which is there on Low Street, you asked us about it, we want it, you heard that here. The money that could be spent from the city to pay for a gym at the Brown, I do not understand why then that would not allow us to put a little bit more money into the project for NYS on Low, which was a very difficult debate, which you guys could listen to on the council, to even spend a little bit money for the study to look at NYS on Low Street. So to me, it does not make logical sense at all.
Matt?
Yeah, I think we need to keep the gym. Let's just assume for a second that Low Street moves forward. That's got to be 2 or 3 years away, right? I mean, permitting, building, everything else, at least 2 years. So there's 2 more years without a gym. I'd love to see them figure out a way to use it now. I think we separate the gym. I'm a big fan of the Brown School becoming resident priority senior living. I think that makes a lot of sense. There may be some compromise with whoever decides to build this to actually have some market rate units as well that we'll probably have to look at, because everybody has to kind of make financial sense when you're building something. But I'm a big fan of it being first priority to residents of Newburyport that are seniors, and keeping the gym.
Ed?
So a lot of times in life, you cannot have your cake and eat it too, and this may be one of those cases. Where I stand on this, 100% in favor of affordable housing for seniors. We can build local preference into that, and I think that's what we should, with as much affordability as possible. We've got a lot of market rate housing in Newburyport. People can't afford that. I think we really need to focus and find a developer through an RFP process, which I know the mayor is working on with his staff, to get somebody that can commit to that. Pull together the financing. This is not going to be on our dime. We may need to work on contributing the building and working out a leasing or an option there, but we need to keep that as a historic asset in our community. There are very skilled developers who can pull together all the state and federal financing for this and the tax credits, historic tax credits. I'm 100% in favor of that. I'm 50% in favor of a community space, a gym, but the problem gets to be the more impact you have on the community by 20 people playing basketball on some morning with all of their cars, that's going to have an impact on the neighbors. And the housing, people will be moving in and out of the housing, so you can only load so much into the site, so that's what my concern about the gym is, and we'd have to pay for the gym. But I'm also 100% in favor of a playground there, whether it's in the existing space, but that's something that many of us committed to back in 2013, so that I am in favor, that outdoor space for the community.
Jared, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, this, what I read in the Daily News, I think in February, is one of the reasons why I finally decided to run about the Brown School, because there was a very cynical attempt to essentially hold the Brown School gymnasium hostage by at least one counselor, by his admission, not up here, in order to force, I guess, building a gym at Low Street, which is, it means that children in the short term don't have anywhere to go. Well, that's great. So that was really unacceptable and unproductive. And I don't agree that it's either or for the affordable housing. We did a layout as long ago as 2014, 9 years ago, and we figured out we could do senior affordable housing. We could do 24 units on the upper 2 floors. That'd be one bedroom and studios. Now we know that no one's going to be on the ground floor, so in the schoolhouse you could add another, 10 units. So ballpark, theoretically, you could do 34. But again, get to 8. Do you really think that 8 counselors, whoever wins this election, are going to ram down the throats of the neighbors' 40-plus units? They're not. That's not going to happen. So in other words, in the schoolhouse, we can get 20-plus units. We probably do have to amend the zoning because it only says 20 now, and we know better. And the interstitial connection between that and the gym was not original to the building, has no value. You blow that out. You have a drive lane for cars. You keep the gymnasium. You don't tear down gymnasiums out of spite.
Anyone else? Afroz?
I'm sorry, I just had to make a comment on several things. There's a lot on the city's website on so many studies that have been done on the Brown School. So that gym and that building is pretty much a lot of deferred maintenance has made it a place where it's really not even a working gym. I think people need to remember that any time you do any renovation, you got to bring things up to code. So the fact that it has to be brought up to code, it's not like we're tearing down a working gym. That's what people is hearing. I just want to clarify that. There's documents, there's a lot of information on this that's available to even look at. That gym is going to have a substantial cost, capital investment to fix. And that's facts. That's data that's actually out there.
So I have a follow-up question. So what's going to get passed first in the council, NYS or the Brown School? Any predictions on that?
Or world peace.
World peace? Right. Serious, you want to answer that yet, or should I go with someone else?
Yeah, I think we could do the NYS piece. I hope can be done quicker. That's not going to happen probably in the next, because there's many pieces and pieces of legislation. The Brown School, again, I hope the mayor is working on an RFP that will give us some actual real live data. And again, to many points made here, there's a reality of how much a developer can do realistically, again, whether that's with or without a gym, but we need some more data on that. So I see no reason why we couldn't make progress on these in the first few months of a new term.
Connie?
Yeah, I would agree. I would like to see both of them move forward quite quickly, actually. I have a little more hope with NYS, just because I do feel like we're a little further down the line with that. Hopefully we'll get some numbers from the mayor soon. And we do have all the studies done. We have all the information that we need to be able to move forward with NYS. But having said that, we have a lot of information on the Brown School as well. We have the RFIs. We have a very clear sense of what developers think could and could not be done in there. The administration has said that they're going to move forward with the RFP process pretty quickly. So we would get some proposals. We'll have some good understanding. It's going to come down to how we can hash it out, who's willing to compromise, and if we can get to 8 on that. Thank you.
Afroz, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I think we could get this done. I mean, and I think we see it with short-term rentals. We are making compromises. Everyone's coming to the table And we recognize that we have these projects that have been stalled and not moving anywhere. So I'm very confident that the council, we have, like I think everyone else mentioned, there's a lot of data, a lot of information, and it's just really coming down and understanding what is it that we're trying to really strive towards in goals. And I always go back to the master plan, because sometimes, as I mentioned before, you have 11 people here, we're changing, right? You get new people coming in and out, but we do have a master plan for the city that outlines our strategy. What are we looking to achieve? And it's always good to revisit or revise, but we got to have a roadmap, and I think when we look at that, we all know what we're trying to do here in our work.
Anyone else?
My money's on NYS.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, so I have 2 more questions, and then that's it. This is probably going to be the hardest question, because, so please give an example of something Mayor Reardon has done well and something he could have handled better. I didn't think he'd be here.
Can we ask him first?
Who wants to go first? Connie?
No, you can stay. I'm going to make the example, the pro and the con, all one example. And frankly, I think it's the reorganization of the parks and moving it under DPS. This is something that, God knows, we had a lot of controversy about it, a lot of discussion in the community. Frankly, I think when Mayor Reardon first came in, it was one of his first initiatives. And I think, we were all learning the process. I'm a new city councilor at the time as well. And, it takes some time to get your feet under yourself and really understand how to make things happen on the council and through the city government. So, I think it was a little rushed in the beginning. I think it needed a little more time to cross T's and dot I's and really, more importantly, gain community feedback and really understand how it was really going to work for the community as a whole. And I think the mayor, sort of brought it to the 1-yard line, realized he wasn't going to get it over the line, took a big step back, really took the time, worked with the community, and then really did bring it through. And I think we've settled on it. Not everybody necessarily loves it, but I do think that we've settled on it. I think it's working well. And I think, that was a really good learning process for both myself and hopefully for Mayor Reardon as well. So, I think not everything is easy. It takes time to understand how to get things through and get consensus done. And I think we did that with the Parks Plan.
Well, I'd like to applaud the mayor for keeping his sanity during recent months. We have huge projects going on at the waterfront now. We're doing over, the bulkhead, the walking areas. We're putting a park in. It's an enormous chaos down there. I'm sure there's, dozens of calls a day because, we missed a good part of the season in this beautiful town. And I think once we keep moving past this, a year from now, the place is going to look great. So he and others at City Hall made the decisions to move forward, and I think that'll be a good decision.
Oh, Matt?
I actually just want to commend the mayor on, in the 20 years that I've lived here, I've seen more progress and updates and community involvement and understanding of what's going on in streets and sidewalks. I've seen more progress in the last 2 years than I have in the last 20. So I think that's something he's handled really well. And I think, curb appeal is super important in Newburyport, and we have to continue to do that well and have a plan to do it. And I commend him for doing that. I think he's doing a great job, and that's one of the reasons I'm also here. Is I want to support what he brings to the table, which I think is a really positive attitude, love for the city, and he's perfect. He hasn't done anything wrong.
Okay.
No, I haven't paid. I haven't paid a lot of attention to things he hasn't done wrong. So.
Anyone else? Afroz?
I will. I think Mayor Reardon has done a really good job of kind of letting people know about how to get involved in the city, in the volunteer boards and commissions, and even stepping up for school committee, and I would say city council. So, and that's been great. I think that kind of, in the paper, through any type of social media platforms, I think talking up and getting people encouraged and impassioned to be involved, I think is really something I really commend. And then the one, I agree with the parks reorg. I think that just, I think it finally got to where it needed to go, but it was a little bit of a halted start.
Anyone else? Ed, you were just, no, go ahead, Ed. You were first.
Thanks. So I've served with three mayors, Mayor John Moak, Mayor Holliday, and the current mayor, Sean Reardon. You know, each of them builds on what's happened previously. And I can say, I think, and I hope I get at least two nods in this room, that I've had very productive and positive relationships with all three. John Moak is not here, but Mayor Holliday and Mayor Reardon is. It's a very tough job. You'd be surprised, and you wouldn't realize until you're on the council to see how hard a mayor has to work. So much goes into it. What I applaud Mayor Reardon for is sticking to his campaign promises. Many of them were from conversations with community members, pushing forward on NYS, the Brown School, the waterfront. I think, you know, something that maybe would have been changed in hindsight, the reorg with parks, as people said, I think there was an element or two of that. I still think there needs to be somebody in charge, and it's kind of a shared leadership model. But hey, let's try it. We can always change it. But I think pushing forward on all those things, I don't think people realize how close we came to backsliding on the waterfront park. I applaud the mayor for trying to find the money to make that initial phase happen. We are still doing the culvert for those who worry about that, and we absolutely should. We're doing 40% of that now, but we were very close to not having that waterfront park move forward, and if it didn't move forward now, I'm not sure it would have moved forward, and I applaud him for pushing through with that.
Jared, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little awkward because, you know, it's a different branch of government, and so I don't want to be an armchair quarterback. But yes, obviously, observing the rollout of the parks reorganization was not done smoothly. I think, you know, it was early in the term of a new mayor, and but as you heard from Councilor Preston, I think the end result is going to work out. One thing I think just to get back to sort of solid plans. We now have a drawing that shows we're going to rehab 59 Low Street, the existing 5,900 square foot building. We know where a gym would go. We know how the parking would fit. So, and it had initially, at least back in February when I saw it, a $5+ million budget. So something hard rather than, you know, just let's just buy it and figure it out later. So I think that was a good move.
Heather, last word on this?
Sure. I will have to reiterate what Councilor Preston said. The parks rollout was a tough one for all of us. It made for a difficult summer, but it did come to the right conclusion at the end. Input came in from all sides, and I think we came to the right final piece. And then I will say what has been really nice to see is his engagement and trying. I agree with Councilor Khan wholeheartedly. Seeing the engagement, trying to get folks in the community more involved in the boards and elected office. It's been nice to see.
Yeah. And I want to throw in that he's been the crossing guard for a while too, and that's pretty awesome. So, so this is the last question. I said this at one of the ward debates, but I'm not sure who to start with. Dyke, I'll start with you. Is it too late for the middle class to be able to afford to live in Newburyport?
Well, in theory, no. In practicality, we're going through a very high period of time. I mean, imagine a modest house on modest Low Street on the market, not on the market, but on Zillow for $777,000. That's our house, which Vicki and I are both astonished that it's there. This is a strange world. And so I think it's good to encourage people where there's not enough housing, and there's not enough anything when it comes to housing. So yeah, we want our kids to move back. We want senior housing. I think maybe we should keep in mind that we live in a national and an international economy, and the housing market has never been more difficult, never been higher in certain areas. And so, you know, I'm going to work for affordable housing. I'm going to, you know, in the C&J Transportation Center, if we can do something there. And I'm going to do all those things. But this is a tough moment. We've never had a moment that I'm aware of where the houses were so expensive you can't find a rental. So as a former journalist, Dave, you know these things, sometimes you just have to look at it and say, we're in a bad period of time, we're going to work for it to get better, and hopefully it will.
Connie had her hand up first.
Yeah, thank you. So So as I mentioned earlier, I was at a Housing Coalition meeting last night at the YWCA, and it was so fantastic to just hear the energy in the room around trying to find a way to create more affordability and inclusivity. So not just affordable housing, big A affordable housing, but inclusivity in general, and that requires more housing hard stock. We need more housing stock, and this coalition in particular is not just Newburyport, it's the surrounding communities as well. But that is going to require that we have more high-density housing, and I know that some people bristle at that, but the idea of inclusivity and historic preservation are not mutually exclusive, thank you, that's the word, mutually exclusive concepts, right? We can preserve our communities. I live in a first period home and I love it, and I'm very passionate about the preservation of our history here. But that doesn't mean that we can't have higher density housing. And that's the only way we are going to be able to provide more housing, to be able to have people from all across the bracket, whether it be race, background, income levels. And we need to embrace that. Newburyport will be a better place if we have more diversity in it, and we have to find a way to look at our zoning and understand it better and create more high-density housing so that we have a better housing stock. Thank you.
I forget who's first. Matt?
Yeah, I just want one distinction. I know some really wealthy people that have no class, and I know some really poor people that have tons of class. So let's call it middle income, be politically correct here, and not middle class. I think we also have to be aware that, housing prices are up, but they could go down, right? I mean, I've owned a couple homes in Newburyport. One of them we never lived in. We bought it, we renovated it, we sold it for less than we bought it for, right? So that does happen. I know it's surprising, but it does happen, and that wasn't that long ago. And to segue into something we haven't talked about, that Connie just talked about, diverse housing is important, but I think we have to be really careful what we wish for as a community. When I decided to move here, I decided to move to Newburyport because it was this really kind of cool place, right? I didn't want to live in Salem. Have you ever tried to get to Salem, get off the exit, get into Salem? It's a nightmare, right? And the idea of let's just throw up housing everywhere is a bad one. People are complaining about the traffic to get to downtown Newburyport right now. Can you imagine having, 5,000 more units somewhere at C&J or Kmart? So I'm not saying that it's not something we should look at, but we've got to be really, really careful what you wish for. I keep my boat in Salisbury because in the summer, you can't get downtown to park and get on your boat.
Right.
So
I think
we have to be careful.
I think you're up next.
This is a really important topic, and I think it's something that we need to act now. And I see that as we are moving forward, it's going to be a tiered approach. It's not going to happen overnight because we find ourselves, and it's just not us, it's a lot of communities, it's all over the place, that these communities and housing prices have gone up, but certain communities have done so more, and Newburyport is very desirable. But there are state-led initiatives in place to get counselors, to get those who do zoning to move a little quicker, and to give us the right tools to make it happen. So I see a lot happening in conjunction with our state-level type of leadership to actually bring down to the local communities on what they need to do. For us as counselors, it's really looking at our zoning. That's going to be the really initial thing that we're going to have to do, and this is going to be next year. We all know it. And I have to tell you, as someone who's been on the city council now, zoning, and I mentioned it earlier, is not for everyone. So we really do need to invest in getting good consultants to work with counselors to help us look and interpret, because it is like another language. And if anyone opens up zoning and tries to interpret it, you end up trying to ask questions. What does this mean? So we need to really invest in having right people working for us as we do these endeavors.
Ed?
Yeah, I think, Dave, this is a central question to really why I'm running for re-election, and that's, how do our young people stay here if they want to stay here, and how do seniors afford to live in the community where they were born, raised their children, and now they can't find anything. So we know it's a problem. We talk about it all the time. People talk about the weather all the time, but nobody does anything about it. I think there's a multiple solution approach we should take. We definitely need to look to zoning, as Councilor Khan mentioned. Myself and Councilor Igerman, several years ago, 2015 or so, still have the scars, as probably does Mayor Holliday, for smart growth zoning. I think that was decried by some people as it's going to ruin Newburyport. Hundreds of kids are going to move in and overwhelm the schools. And now we've got, yeah, maybe you don't like the way they look, but we have three places, the third one's coming, where new people can come in, and people, I have lots of folks that have moved into that to afford a rental. So we need to expand on that, and there's going to be the MBTA communities zoning, which is going across the state. We need to look at what I call the McMansionizing of parts of Newburyport, where you have people buying a $400,000 ranch built in 1962, demoing it. We have protections on older properties, but not newer properties, and they're putting up, it goes from $400,000 to $2 million. That's in a lot of neighborhoods. Drive around and you'll see it, or it's on your street. We need to take some steps to make sure that that does not happen.
Chad?
Yeah, I mean, you asked a similar question last week in the Daily News. First, to define terms, middle class. The median income last we knew in Massachusetts is around $90,000. That's it. Sounds low, right? So, if you're going to buy an $800,000 house. So my point was, if you can't expect housing prices to drop 50% to the $400,000 level, and that probably would show a catastrophe for homeowners here anyway, because it's their biggest investment. But there are things we can do. As Ed mentioned, we did pass the Smart Growth District after talking about it for a long time, in advance, years in advance of the state mandate. They're now following what we did. We can expand it. We then also put in an inclusionary housing ordinance, which I also co-sponsored. So any project over 5 units, you need 12%. You think, well, that doesn't make a difference. It does. So our subsidized housing inventory has actually improved over the last 10 years. In 2013, it was only around 7.6%. It's now up at about 9.5, whereas other towns are nowhere. West Boxford is at 1.3. So there are things we can do, and also I want to echo, you don't just upzone everything willy-nilly. It's called smart growth because it's in the right place. We can do that. We have some places to put it.
Right. Did anyone else? Did I miss
Yes.
anyone? Yeah, Heather.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the $50,000 we got from the state in the grant that we accepted recently, where we have a consultant coming in to look at what the Story Ave area looks like. And this also includes the C&J spot, too, where we could possibly have a different look to that area, where we could have 40R. We could actually have affordable housing. So that is in play, and that's something that we'll have information on by next June.
Okay. All right, well, that's about all we have time for, so thank you to all the candidates for running office and for Greater Newburyport Community Media Hub for televising this forum. My mouth is gone. Thanks again to Karen Trowbridge for watching the clock, and for the staff here for organizing the furniture. I want to thank everyone who attended and watched live, and please make sure you go out and vote on November 7th. It's really important, so good night and take care. That's it.